I still have nightmares about when we went to Lincoln's Inn. If you remember?
Fish and chips with that crazy barrister type.
Yeah. Do you remember that was
I
weird?
do. Yeah.
That was really weird, wasn't it?
Bonkers. Totally bonkers. I'd forgotten about that.
He nearly got banned, after that.
Only nearly. It is a wonderful city, isn't it? I mean, the contrasts and the people we meet. People say, why do you want to be your own boss? Because you do have the opportunity to meet people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The weight of owning your own business in London at the moment is very, very heavy. They're not making it easy for us. But still, I bounce out of bed every morning and love what I do. And I think it's about being given a steer sometime in life. I talk to a lot of schools. I work with a charity called Speakers for Schools, advocating hospitality as a possible career. Because my story is that I actually have no education. I bounced out of school at 15 in Blackpool, where education was on the back burner and crowd control was first and foremost. And I was very lucky that I had an idea that I wanted to be a chef, and then I very, very quickly realised that I didn't like it at all. When I was working as a 15-year-old in Blackpool, cooking 120 breakfasts for geriatrics on Wallace Arnold coach trips, and I got myself into college, catering college, and during catering college I had to do a placement. So for a whole load of sliding door reasons, I ended up working as a waiter in a 2-star Michelin restaurant in Yorkshire called the Box Tree.
Right. That was what year was that?
85. Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, the Smiths.
Right. Yeah.
It was a good time. And when I finished my 26 weeks there for industrial release, the chef gave me an exit interview and he said, I can see you're interested in this because you polish your shoes every day. And that was as simple as that. He took it upon himself to give me a careers talk. And he said, get yourself a job working for Raymond Blanc at Le Manoir or Quat'Saisons. So I went off back to college in October of 85. And in early 86, I saw an advert.
Yeah.
And the advert was for assistant head waiter
at
Le Manoir or Quat'Saisons. So I wrote a letter, did the letter, got an answer back for an interview, went for an interview, and I was very, very cheeky. I'd had to drive down from Blackpool, so it was costing me a fair bit.
Yeah.
So I decided I would have lunch before my interview. And at 10 to 3, I called the head waiter over and I said, will you let Monsieur Desonclos know that his 3 o'clock appointment is here? Would he like to join me?
You're joking, really?
Yeah. And I don't, it wasn't planned. It's just kind of like, I thought, well, I'll do this. I'm sat here. Why go off and look for him? Let them do that. And anyway, he joined me, and I congratulated him on the service. And I liked this note, and that was particularly well done. I can see myself fitting in very nicely. Can't start until July. So I wasn't letting on that I was still at college.
Right. So you interviewed him,
and well, then he started speaking French to me. And I was a little bit on the back foot with that. But at the end of it, he said, I'll give you a job as a waiter, and if you do a year as a waiter, you'll automatically get promotion to the assistant head waiter job.
Wow.
So I was 20 when I was working as a waiter. First English-speaking waiter to work at the Manoir. They were all French and Italian. And I did my year. Got the blue jacket, and I was assistant head waiter and then head waiter when I was 23.
Wow, that's some achievement.
And I stayed there for 6 years. I mean, lots of people say, David, why pied à terre? Why the name, but why that style of food? So it comes down to what you know best.
Yeah.
Stick to what you know best.
Yeah.
And I guess had I got an apprenticeship in pizzas, it would be very different. It would be very different.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you say about you left school 15, no education, because a lot of people fear that because sometimes having no education does spur you on to do things yourself.
I think so, definitely.
I had no education.
Yeah.
I left school at 15, and I had no option but to have my own business. I would never have earned enough money to do the things I wanted to do if I was still working, doing cleaning, portering, driving.
What was the first business you had?
The first business I had a market stall.
Huh?
So basically I was just buying and selling. Then I learned how to do that. Basically you buy something for £1, sell it for £2. And that's all the principle of me doing it.
Proper salesman.
So it's probably similar to you in a way of education wise. But that is something maybe I could get you in another podcast and we can discuss that. Because I think people need to know that you don't need to have all these qualifications to be successful in business.
It helps to have
of course, yeah.
Our home has a BA, an MA and a PhD, and my wife has them all.
I know, I know. But again, that it's just to show people who haven't got that. And also, you learn as you progress.
As you go along, yeah.
I've learned more from my accountant, my solicitor, from those sort of people ever than I could have learned at school, because you're being taught by people who are telling you what they know, not teachers. So that's good.
I was very fortunate, and I bagged an old boy customer at Le Manoir as my company chairman, and he's still there. He's 84 years old, so he was in having lunch yesterday with me, and everything's run past him. It's even like the stupid things. I just talked to Nick about that, and everybody in the company. He's our chairman, and he kind of loves the restaurant. It's the fun part of his life in terms of career. He doesn't work as a solicitor anymore, but it is surrounding yourself with people and not being afraid to own up to not knowing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's another thing. I think you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't take on advice, and if you're not open to conversation and to being naturally curious about things, it gets really hard.
Yeah.
So the more you know.
Yeah, it's important to be honest about what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah, so surrounding yourself with good people is essential.
So where did you go from there, Dave?
I did my 6 years at the Manoir. What a fine coffee. And Redemption. It's prison-based.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the roasting is done in, I'm not sure what prison or prisons in general, but they also employ quite a lot of ex-convicts when they come out. Yeah, so it's a really worthwhile spend on the coffee, reducing offending.
Where did you got
just round the corner?
Oh, okay,
yeah,
that's good.
Bit pricey at £4.70.
Yeah, very pricey,
but if I'm saving someone's life, it's worth it.
Absolutely worth it.
So what happened to me next? So I was at Le Manoir for 6 years. I remember my first day. I was on an induction and they were showing me around, and they gave me the rota. And my first day said 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I thought, oh, sweet, that's a nice, easy day for me. Little did I know that those were the two start times. So I started at 9 o'clock. I did the lunch service. I took a 2-hour break, and I came back at 6 o'clock and did the dinner service.
Right.
And it was like that. First wage packet, I didn't know how much I was earning. I hadn't asked. Didn't know how many hours a week I was working. I hadn't asked.
Yeah.
I just, had been given this steer, and the opportunity was staring me in the face to grab it.
Yeah.
And I did that. So I always say when I'm eating out anywhere, people are talking to me about restaurants, I say, I'm always the best waiter in the room because of that year that I did on the floor at the Manoir. I was taught by a brilliant head waiter, Christian, who taught me to look for what is not there. He says, you can all see what is there. The coffee is there, but are the petit fours, are the sugar, is the milk on the side? If it's a teapot, is there a strainer? If they've got teas and coffees on the table, they should have petit fours. If there's water glasses, is there water in it? We would serve bread until people said no, and if they said no, we'd take the bread plate away. If you've got an empty bread plate, why is empty bread plate there? The bread plate should have bread on it.
Yeah.
He would walk through the room and he would reel off to me everything that was wrong with my station.
Yeah.
And I go, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah. They're important, those people. How do you learn that?
Yeah. And I worry for people now with working from home. You bounce off people and you grow with people. There's lots of careers. I mean, how does a journalist sits there listening to his boss.
Yeah.
Probably just bullshit to somebody about something. But how do you do that if you're at home? This whole working from home stuff's got to stop.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I do see it more now. I see more people coming back to work because I think that's changed the way people work. You know, you still get people say, "Oh, I work from home today," and things like that. And it's sort of accepting. I think that's got to change.
I think it will pivot back in
Yeah.
due course. It'll take another 3 to 5 years.
Mm.
But then there's the whole microeconomy. There's the whole
Yeah.
microeconomy that's suffering because there's not the same number of coffee cups being sold
Yeah.
at the stations, the pints of milk picked up, the tea bags, all the things that keep that little microeconomy going.
Yeah, and people don't think about that, but it's really important.
And like lunch at the restaurant, it's we're only doing 3 lunches a week now instead of 6, and even those 3, it's questionable whether or not we should be opening.
Of course,
Yeah.
because your costs have got to outweigh.
Yeah.
And
when we look at business rates,
oh
don't
God, yeah.
don't get me started.
No, I know. I had someone in the other day, and who owns the 4 pubs around here, and he was saying the business rate's killing him, and now all the new laws, NI,
Yeah.
working wage, where he had 10 staff, he's got to reduce the staff.
Yeah.
So all those things are there.
I know the it's a real kick in the teeth. What was next? What was
So
next?
so basically, take us now. Like, if you've been working, when did you start to think I'm going to have my own restaurant? It takes a lot of.
I kind of got the idea when I was still at college, and I'd been to the Box Tree, and on my release, and it kind of infused me with enthusiasm for hospitality, because it was the attitude of the chefs and the team. It was the first time I'd seen people working together as opposed to working in the same space but not working together.
Yeah.
In all the part-time jobs I had in Blackpool, the chefs and the front of house, it was open warfare.
Yeah.
You couldn't go in and say, can you reheat this, or because table 10 wants the steak well done. You're ducking as they throw stuff at you. But
that is interesting, because I did spend a short time in a restaurant, and it was amazing. It was full on, and the chefs and the waiters were like at each other constantly, especially if they brought in a late order. So yeah, I can understand that.
Being at the Box Tree and at a Michelin starred restaurant, there was all this wonderful produce coming through, and the kitchen wanted this front of house to know what the food was. There was always these food trainings, food tastings. Their point was that if we don't know how it tastes, how can we explain to the customers? And I saw my first wild mushrooms, my first girolles, first morels, my very first wild strawberries. Wow.
Yeah.
And then when I got that steer to go to the Manoir, at the Manoir I thought, I'm working bloody long hours here. And my dad had always been a bit of a wheeler dealer, a bit of a del boy. Actually, my mum was very entrepreneurial. She started a hotel in Ireland.
Wow.
From one spare bedroom. She took a lodger in, and she bought the house next door and bought the house next door. And when we left Ireland in '77, she'd just sold the hotel. I think it had about 40 bedrooms, ballrooms, 2 bars, restaurants.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad had a petrol station, sold second-hand cars.
Wow.
Had a dry cleaners in the town.
That is
entrepreneurial. They were both very entrepreneurial.
Yeah. What part of Ireland was that?
In Monaghan, just on the border, up in Ulster in the north, but on the south side of the north. Bit confusing. What was the thread? So, I've lost my thread now. I do that all the time.
We'll get your thread back. Yeah, no, it's when you first started up your own business, why?
My dad would always say, if you can, work for yourself, because you're putting the hours in for somebody else.
Yeah.
So that had been always my sort of mantra in my head. I am going to somehow open a restaurant. And I remember my very first week, when I joined Le Manoir, I was lodging with the head chef, a guy called Bruno Lube. And he cooked lunch for me on my first day off. The restaurant closed on a Monday. And he was asking me about where I came from and what am I going to do. And I said, I'm going to open my own restaurant. I remember saying it to him, and he had a pal, a guy called Clive Fretwell. And they said, how are you going to do that? And I said, I don't know. I don't know.
How old was you then?
I was 20.
That's great.
Yeah. And then I was very, very friendly with my great pal Richard Neat, who was my first business partner and chef, and he and I used to sit late at night at the Manoir playing chess and drinking leftover wine, and we hatched that plan that we would do it together
and doing your dream.
And then he went off to Paris to work for Joël Robuchon at a restaurant called Jamin, which was probably the best restaurant in the world at the time.
Wow.
And then he came back to London, and I stayed at the Manoir, trying to pick the punters who might invest. I thought any customer coming to the Manoir from London would be a good possible investor.
Right.
And if you knew the names, like Rothschild family, Lord Lichfield,
Okay, big names.
Bernie Eccleston, Max Mosley, Pidgley family from Berkeley Homes. We had all of them were prime contacts for me. I had 48 possible investors.
So you were getting on well with these people.
Yeah. And then people would say, David, you're a young guy. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I go, I'm going to open my own restaurant. And that was that's how we raised the money. So Richard and I talked about it. He came back from Paris and he was working for Marco as head chef at Harvey's. And that was quite a kitchen, because Richard's sous chef was a Scottish guy called Gordon Ramsay.
Oh, was it?
And the junior sous chef was a guy called Phil Howard. So Phil had a restaurant for 25 years in Mayfair at 2-star. And Gordon is worth 250 million now with 150 restaurants worldwide.
Amazing.
Yeah, he is amazing, really. So we were. So I was talking about surrounding yourself with talented people, and I can remember I told you about my German Nick. So I remember Nick and Margaret meeting them probably about 88, 89, and they would come back to the Manoir twice a year. And on this particular occasion, Nick popped the question, you're a young guy. I said, shh, I'm opening a restaurant in London. Shh. And I thought he might be a prospective investor. So I told him, I'm doing this thing called a business expansion scheme, which is a tax incentivized. The new one now is EIS, Enterprise Investment Scheme. And I told him, I've been working with lawyers through government schemes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd got some money for startups. I had a business advisor, an accountant, and a solicitor, all of which I'd had from working the network of small business enterprise schemes. And I said, I've got a placement document nearly ready. To which he said, he'd like to look at it. So I arranged to have breakfast with him the next day, but I had to go and ask Raymond, can I sit with a customer for breakfast? Because and not let on to Raymond why, because I was planning to jump overboard. Yeah. Anyway, Nick, he read the papers and he laughed heartedly all the way through. Said, "You're going to get your ass sued here. This is no. Scratch. So he said, look, I've got someone in the office who will knock this into shape for you. If you come up to London next week." I said, I'm off on a Monday. So I landed, and so it's sliding doors of the world. I ended up on Gray's Inn Road, in Gray's Inn, at his law firm. Little did I know, 6-7 years later, I would be living on Gray's Inn Road.
Really?
Just up the street, 100 yards up the street. So on that particular Monday, he handed over the documents and said, "You won't get sued with this." Because it's the language, I would say, we're going to do this. And if you don't do it, then you're open to being sued because you said you were going to do it. If you say you intend to do it, then it's an open thing. You intend to do it, but you might not do it.
Who would be looking to sue you then?
Investors, if it went wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we read through the document, and he pointed out all of the caveats that he'd corrected and made safe. And then we were just chatting about, what's next. And I said, well, he says, you need a company. I said, what do we need to have in a company? He said, you need a company secretary and a company chairman and, £150 to get it going. I said, okay, I can do that. I'll be secretary. Why don't you do chairman? And he didn't see that coming. And he was like, I have to talk to my partners. So he said, come back next Monday and I'll have an answer for you. And he came on board. And in that summer, that must have been the summer of 91, Richard and I went to Raymond and we told him what we were planning. And he jumped on board.
Oh, good.
He was brilliant, yeah. So he came on board as an advisor director, investor.
All right.
And he gave me a whole bunch of new names of people who dined at the Manoir who might invest.
Wow. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that was coming, or do you think he was going to be a bit?
Well, the way we put it to him was, we would like to be your new opening in London.
Oh.
So, like, portray it as being
So you dragged him in.
Raymond's protégé's opening in London.
Excellent.
So, it shone a light on the Manoir. Every time we had a review in the first 3 to 5 years, they would mention, the Manoir got a mention,
That's very good.
and we were able to ring up and say to suppliers, "We're the Manoir Quat'Saisons' new opening in London.
Yeah.
We would like a credit form sending out," and we were able to get better
Good
terms.
credit, yeah.
We just to get credit at all.
Yeah.
But we were able to dictate a bit more because people wanted to work with Raymond. No, it was brilliant.
That was good. And it was good you kept that good relationship with him.
Yeah, keeping people around you. Again, it's keeping that circle of people who have your best interests at heart and aren't afraid to say when it might be going tits up.
Yeah. Yeah. No. It should. It's good to have all that advice around you.
And then you get the back in when we opened in 91, it was always broadsheet. It was always magazines. There's no social media.
No, of course
not. No. That wasn't something at all.
Yeah.
We used to do things. We didn't use you, but we used a printer over in Marylebone on Crawford Street. I can't think of the name of it. We used to do postcards every month, send them out to the customers.
Yeah.
We knew people's addresses.
Yeah. That was it, wasn't it? You'd have to do postals and send them out to people and get them on board. That's really good.
600 stamps.
Yeah.
600 postcards.
All the mail outs. We need to do mail. Yeah, all the mail outs to try and get
That's
people.
all gone, isn't it?
It's all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the leaflet distribution. Not many people do the leaflets now because people don't want to put through their door. So that's the way it is. But that's it. So you've done that. You've made a decision. How did you go about finding a location?
We were talking to the restaurant agents, and we had found a site in Kensington, and we put an offer on it, and we were halfway through legals. Excuse me, we're halfway through legals, and then Raymond had cajoled one of his previous investors to get on board with us, and had asked him if he would be a non-exec as well. So there was a gentleman called Clifford Harris, and he specialised in a lot of receivership work.
Right.
And shortly after we'd met and we'd done the document, we'd had money coming into the bank account, and I got a call from Clifford saying he's found this property's just come across his desk, 34 Charlotte Street. It's with Barclays. It's an Indian restaurant called Jamdani. Beautiful fit out. We didn't change anything.
Okay.
We didn't even change the phone number.
Well, that's good though, isn't it? At that stage.
And he said if you wanted it, you had to move quickly. And Raymond gave me permission to take the evening off at the Manoir. I drove into London, and I met Clifford's partner.
Yeah.
And we ate in the restaurant, and we had a look around, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. And we took it over. We paid the back rent to the landlord and a bit of money to HMRC and a bit here and a bit there, and we got the amazing site. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then
that was it. And we dropped the site in Kensington, took a hit on the legal fees on that, and we're still on Charlotte Street. It's a great location.
Yeah,
it's an expensive location, but it's
lovely.
Yeah.
But you had another restaurant.
I had several others. Yeah.
When we were first together, you had another one down in
Marylebone, and that's how we met. It was what was his name? Artan.
That's right.
Yes, he came to work as a GM in L'Autre-Pied, the other foot, which was meant to be just a neighbourhood restaurant, but it went and got itself a Michelin Star, which wasn't the plan. And then we opened a second restaurant on the same street called Pied Nu, which was barefooted in translation, and that was kind of like almost a completely raw concept of tartars, ceviches, marinades. That did really well, and then we went a little bit off-piste and opened 2 smokehouses
Right.
and that was called 160 in West Hampstead, and the second one was off Liverpool Street, Devonshire Square area.
Okay, right. Oh, that's
And-
interesting. I didn't mean you had all those. I remember you had the one
Yeah.
at Michelin.
And through the TV series, The Restaurant, we started the LCC, the London Cocktail Club,
Right.
which the first site was on Good Street, second site was Shaftesbury Avenue, and they now have 46 bars.
That's a big move from when you started in Charlotte.
Yeah. I don't have anything to do with the cocktail bars
No.
anymore. I'm just a shareholder.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
So you've gone from there. You've got your own restaurant, and now you're establishing yourself in Charlotte Street.
yes, on Charlotte Street, and I don't have any plans to do anything new.
Mm.
It's sad, but I just feel that there's too much negativity to want to put my do I want to put my home on the line anymore?
Absolutely.
I've put my home on the line a number
So
of
many times. Yeah.
and I've been able to work it out. But using it as a guarantee on loans. But I'm 60 now.
Yeah.
And I can't afford to lose. To have the jeopardy. It's too much stress.
Well, you look well for 60, David. Not too much stress, I hope. David, look, I know you're busy and I know you've got things to do. Could we finish this conversation off when you've got more time?
Totally.
Yeah, I'd love you to come in again and carry it on, and then we can sort of go from there. 'Cause I know everyone would like to listen to it, and I love listening to it, and then you can take me through, and there's loads of things we're going to try and advise people on starting their own business, etc., especially the bit about not going to college. And I know you've got strong views on going to college and things like that. Yeah. So I'd love to take all those things on board with you.
Yeah, it was funny. I was at this school up in Kensal Rise, and they're a very, very bright bunch. It was A-level students, about 70 of them, and I was advocating about the possibilities in hospitality. And this young lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, I'd love to visit your restaurant sometime. I'm quite taken by the idea of not going to university." And I said, "What are your subjects?" And she said, "Oh, I'm doing I can't exactly remember, physics, chemistry, English," and she's like doing 4 A levels. I said, "What's your predictives?" "Oh, AA stars." I said, No, hospitality can wait. You need to go to university. You're the bright spark. You're the future doctors, dentists. You're
what we need at university.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
It's not. No. And again, I'd love to go through all that with you because I know that we can talk about it for hours. So thanks for coming in, David. I really, really appreciate it.
I think next time it's got to be a cheeky bottle of white wine instead of coffee.
Yeah, why not?
That always makes the conversation go more easily, more smoothly.
Yeah, definitely.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Thanks, David. Thank you.